The velvet lounge breathed in shadows and exhaled secrets. Dim amber lights flickered against the polished bar top, catching in half-empty whiskey glasses and casting golden halos through the haze of smoke and laughter. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of aged liquor, spilled beer, and the quiet desperation of people who came here not just to drink, but to forget. Weary travelers hunched over their glasses, local regulars claimed their usual stools, and music hummed low in the background like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Behind the bar moved Lila. She wore her practiced smile like armor, bright and effortless, even though her feet ached and her thoughts were miles away from this place. To the patrons, she was just the spirited bar girl with quick hands and quicker wit, sliding drinks across the counter and laughing at jokes she'd heard 100 times before. But beneath the smile lived dreams she rarely spoke aloud, of freedom, of a life that didn't smell like whiskey and midnight regret. That night, the door swung open with a burst of noise and cold air. A group of men stumbled inside, their laughter louder than the music, their presence impossible to ignore. At their center was Ethan. He carried himself with an easy confidence, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. His suit jacket was loosened, tie undone, eyes bright with reckless charm. Money clung to him in invisible ways, in his careless grin, in the way the room seemed to subtly shift to accommodate him. The drinks flowed faster once they arrived. Shot after shot lined the counter, and Ethan's laughter grew louder, his movements looser. Lila watched him between orders, something about his unguarded joy pulling at her attention. He wasn't like the others who came in with heavy hearts and heavier silences. He lived loudly, freely, like tomorrow was a promise, not a burden. As the night deepened, so did his intoxication. When their eyes met across the bar, it felt accidental, harmless. Yet Lila found herself smiling a little longer, laughing a little softer. She knew better than to be drawn to someone like him, a billionaire whose world glittered far beyond her reach. But in that moment, labels didn't matter. There was just the bar, the music, and the strange pull between two lives that were never meant to cross. And still, they did. Unaware that this fleeting encounter, born under dim lights and empty glasses, was about to change everything. The laughter peaked with the final round of shots. Glasses clinked, voices blurred, and Ethan, already unsteady, rose too quickly from his stool. The moment stretched just long enough for Lila to notice the danger before it happened. His foot caught the edge of the chair, and he stumbled forward, crashing to the floor in a mess of apologies and startled laughter. "Hey, are you okay?" Lila was at his side instantly. Ignoring the amused cheers of his friends, she slipped an arm around him, steady but gentle, and helped him to a quiet booth near the back of the bar. The velvet lounge felt smaller there, softer. The noise faded into a distant hum as Ethan sank into the seat, his laughter turning sheepish. "Guess I overestimated my balance," he said, rubbing his temple. Lila smiled, shaking her head. "Happens more often than you think." They talked while the night lingered around them, first about nothing, then about everything. Ethan spoke of boardrooms and expectations, of a life where every move was planned and every mistake magnified. The charm didn't disappear, but something heavier surfaced beneath it. "I'm surrounded by people all the time," he admitted quietly, staring at his glass. "But it's lonely in ways I can't explain." Lila listened, really listened. In return, she shared pieces of herself, dreams tucked away between late shifts, the strength it took to keep smiling when life felt stuck. She didn't pretend to be more than she was, and that honesty captivated him. "You're real," Ethan said, meeting her eyes. "That's rare." The words lingered between them. As the hours slipped by, the space between them seemed to shrink. Ethan leaned closer, drawn by something deeper than attraction, something steady, grounding. Without fully thinking, he brushed his lips against hers. The kiss was soft, unexpected, electric. Lila froze for half a heartbeat before the world fell quiet. The music faded, the bar disappeared, and there was only warmth and breath and the sudden realization that something had shifted. They pulled apart slowly, both stunned. Ethan began, then stopped. Lila's heart raced, her thoughts tangled. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a drunken mistake. It was a spark neither of them had planned for, and neither could ignore. That night, as the lights dimmed and last calls echoed through the velvet lounge, both walked away knowing one thing for certain. This was a night they would never forget. Morning crept in quietly, carrying sunlight that felt far too bright for Lila's tired eyes. She lay still for a moment, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, the memories of the previous night drifting back in fragments. Soft laughter, shared confessions, the warmth of a kiss she hadn't expected but couldn't forget. When she finally turned toward the other side of the bed, her heart dipped. Ethan was gone. The space beside her was cold, untouched by morning. For a brief, foolish second, disappointment tightened her chest. Then she noticed the folded piece of paper resting on the nightstand. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. Lila, last night meant more to me than I can explain. I didn't want to wake you, but I didn't want to disappear either. Call me. A number followed, written hastily but deliberately. She sank back against the pillows, the note clutched in her hand. Was it real? Or just the aftermath of whiskey and dim lights? People, like Ethan, didn't stay. They passed through lives like hers, leaving stories behind, but never themselves. Across the city, Ethan stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, tie loosened, coffee untouched. The city below buzzed with purpose, but he felt strangely detached from it all. Meetings awaited him, expectations demanded his attention. Yet his thoughts kept drifting back to the bar, to Lila's laugh, to the way she looked at him without wanting anything from him. For the first time in a long while, the weight of his world felt unbearable. He told himself it was reckless, impossible. She existed in a life far removed from his own. And yet, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling that something important had begun, and that walking away would be a mistake he'd regret. Back in her small apartment, Lila stared at her phone for nearly an hour. Then she exhaled, squared her shoulders, and pressed call. The ring felt louder than it should have. Her breath caught when he answered. "Lila," Ethan said, relief clear in his voice. They spoke carefully at first, circling the moment neither wanted to name. But beneath every word was excitement, hesitation, hope. When he suggested meeting again, silence stretched between them, heavy, honest. "Yes," she finally said, "let's meet." They hung up knowing the path ahead wouldn't be easy. Different worlds, different expectations, too many obstacles waiting in the shadows. But for now, they had chosen to take one step forward, fully aware that whatever they were beginning would test them in ways neither was prepared for. Love, Lila soon learned, was not gentle when placed under a spotlight. Ethan took her into a world she had only ever glimpsed from a distance. Elegant dinners where crystal glasses chimed softly, charity galas wrapped in silk and status, conversations layered with unspoken judgments. At his side, she felt both visible and invisible. Smiles were polite but cold, eyes lingered too long on her dress, her manners, her past. "The bar girl," they whispered without words. She tried to stand tall, but doubt crept in like a slow poison. Did she belong here? Or was she just a temporary rebellion in Ethan's carefully constructed life? Ethan noticed the way her hand tightened in his, the way her laughter softened around his friends. He reassured her in quiet moments, reminding her that he chose her, not out of defiance, but out of truth. Still, the pressure grew heavier, especially when his family stepped in. It wasn't long before Lila uncovered the truth. A chance overheard conversation, a polite invitation that felt more like a trap. Ethan's family had plans, alliances to protect, reputations to preserve, futures to arrange. She was an inconvenience, a phase they expected him to outgrow. Worse, they believed she could be persuaded to walk away, quietly. The realization shattered her. Every insecurity she'd buried, rose to the surface. She considered leaving, sparing him the conflict, sparing herself the humiliation. But love had already taken root, and it refused to be silenced. The confrontation came on a night heavy with tension. Seated across from Ethan's family in a room polished to perfection, Lila felt small but not weak. When the veiled warnings turned into outright dismissal, something inside her steadied. "I won't apologize for who I am," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I didn't choose Ethan for his money or his name. I chose him because he sees me, and I love him." The room fell silent. Ethan stood beside her, unwavering. "And I choose her," he said, "not despite the world, but in spite of it." In that moment, expectations cracked. Control slipped. Love spoke louder than power ever could. They walked away hand in hand, uncertain of what the future would bring, but certain of one thing: they would face it together. Because some loves are not meant to be easy, they are meant to be brave.